The day my HOA told me they had sold my land, I didn't shout. I didn't panic. I just stood there in the afternoon sun and smiled. Not because I was happy, but because sometimes the moment people think they've won is exactly when they've already lost. I had just returned from 2 weeks in Florida. 14 quiet days where the biggest decision I had to make was whether to swim before breakfast or after. I left my phone in the hotel room most of the time, walked along the beach, read 3 books, and let the ocean wash the stress out of my head. When my taxi rolled through the entrance of Riverside Hills, I remember thinking how peaceful everything looked. Same tidy lawns, same identical townhouses, same sleepy playground where kids were screaming and laughing like they owned the world. For the first time in months, I felt ready to come home, ready to focus again on the thing I had spent 5 years building toward. My land, 2 acres at the very edge of the community, quiet, surrounded by trees, far enough from the busy streets that at night you could actually hear the wind moving through the branches. It was where I planned to build my retirement cabin. Nothing fancy, just a simple wooden place with a wide porch and big windows facing the woods. 5 years of planning, 5 years of saving, 5 years of imagining what mornings there would feel like. Construction was supposed to start in 3 months. The taxi turned on a riverside lane, and I leaned forward. My lot's just up here on the right. But as we rounded the curve, I saw 4 people standing in front of my property, waiting. Even from a distance, I recognized them. Patricia Moore, the HOA president, silver hair pulled back tight, pearl necklace shining in the sun. Dennis Walsh, the treasurer, already sweating through his shirt, even though the weather wasn't that hot. And 2 other board members who always sat quietly during meetings and nodded whenever Patricia spoke. The taxi stopped 20 feet away. I paid the driver, grabbed my suitcase, and stepped out. Something about the way they stood there, arms crossed, blocking the entrance, made the air feel heavy. Patricia smiled when I approached. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who already knew how this conversation would end. "Well, Marcus," she said calmly, "you're back earlier than we expected." I frowned slightly. I was gone exactly 2 weeks. She tilted her head. "Yes, we thought you might stay away longer." The way she said it made a chill crawl down my spine. I looked past them toward my property, and my stomach dropped. The land was torn up with heavy tire tracks. My survey stakes were gone, and right in the center of my lot stood a large construction sign I had never seen before. My throat went dry. What happened to my land? The board members exchanged quick glances. Walsh wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. But Patricia just kept smiling. "Well, Marcus, while you were away, the HOA faced a financial emergency." "What kind of emergency?" "Debt," Walsh blurted quickly. "Legal fees, unpaid taxes, some investments that didn't work out." Patricia raised a hand gently. So the board had to make an executive decision. My heart started beating harder. "What decision?" Her smile widened. "We sold it." For a moment, the world felt slightly tilted. "You sold my land?" "Yes," she said simply. "Last week, the buyer paid cash. It saved the HOA from bankruptcy." I stared at her. "You sold my land without asking me." "You were unavailable," she shrugged. "We tried calling." "That's not how property law works," I said. One of the other board members shifted nervously. "There were documents. Everything was handled legally," Patricia added. They all watched me closely then, waiting for the explosion, the shouting, the anger. But something strange happened inside me. The anger came, hot and sharp, but then it faded, replaced by something calmer. Because the moment Patricia said they finalized the sale last Thursday, I remembered something important. Something those 4 people didn't know. So instead of yelling, I smiled. Just a little. Patricia frowned. "Why are you smiling?" I shrugged slightly. "Just tired from traveling." Then I asked quietly, "When exactly did you complete the sale?" Walsh puffed his chest proudly. "Last Thursday. Money cleared Friday morning." I nodded slowly. "Last Thursday." And suddenly my mind drifted back 6 months to the moment I first realized something was very wrong with our HOA. It started during an emergency meeting. The community center was packed with worried homeowners while Patricia stood at the podium announcing that the HOA was in serious financial trouble. $214,000 in debt. Her solution was simple. Every homeowner had to pay an extra $5,000 immediately. Most people panicked, but I sat in the back doing the math. 38 homes, 5,000 each. That only covered 190,000. When the meeting ended, I asked Walsh about the missing 24,000. His face turned red. We're exploring other options. What options? Community assets. The problem was the HOA didn't really own anything valuable. That was the moment I knew something didn't add up. After that meeting, the harassment started. Parking violations that didn't exist. Letters about lawn problems, even though my grass was trimmed perfectly. Notices about meetings I had supposedly missed. I didn't argue. I simply documented everything. Photos, letters, dates. Then one afternoon, I checked my property file at the county office. The clerk casually mentioned something odd. Someone from the HOA had requested copies of my land deed 3 different times that month. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I started reading the HOA bylaws carefully. Buried deep in the legal language, I found something disturbing. In extreme financial emergencies, the board could place liens on properties owned by homeowners who refused assessments. In rare cases, they could even force a sale, only with proper documentation. A few weeks later, a letter arrived. According to the document, I had signed power of attorney, giving Patricia more control over my property if I became unresponsive. The signature looked like mine, but I had never signed it. That was the moment I understood everything. They weren't just harassing me. They were preparing to steal my land. At that point, I could have gone to the police immediately. But something inside me said wait, because accusations without proof are just noise. So instead of confronting them, I went quiet. Stopped attending meetings. Stopped asking questions. To them, it looked like I had given up. But in reality, I was listening. Patricia held private HOA meetings every Tuesday night at her townhouse. The unit next door belonged to an elderly man named Mr. Patterson, almost completely deaf. After helping him with groceries a few times, he trusted me enough to lend me his spare key. So every Tuesday evening, I sat quietly in his living room and listened through the wall. I heard everything. Their plan to forge documents. Their plan to sell my land. Their plan to do it while I was away on vacation. And when I heard them laughing about it, that was the moment I stopped feeling like a victim and started making a plan. With the help of my lawyer, Rebecca, I quietly transferred the real ownership of my land into a development trust. Then we left behind an outdated deed, one that would fool anyone who only checks surface records. To the HOA, it looked like I still owned Lot 47. But legally, that land wasn't mine anymore. Then I made one more call. To my old college roommate, Richard Davidson, the developer who would eventually buy the land. So when Patricia told me they sold my property last Thursday, I couldn't help smiling. Back in the present, I looked at the 4 board members standing in front of me. Then I pulled a folded document from my jacket. The land you sold, I said calmly, was never mine to begin with. Silence fell like a stone. Patricia's smile disappeared. That's impossible. Actually, I said gently, it's already owned by Riverside Development Trust. Walsh's hands started shaking. But we checked the county records. You checked an outdated filing, I said. Then I tapped my phone. Their voices filled the air. Recordings from 7 secret meetings discussing the forged documents and their plan to steal my land. Their faces went pale. Then I delivered the final truth. The developer you sold the land to Richard Davidson? I paused. He's my college roommate. At that exact moment, Rebecca pulled up in her car. 2 police vehicles followed behind her. Within minutes, the board members were in handcuffs. Fraud. Forgery. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Turns out accepting $220,000 for land you don't legally own attracts federal attention. Months later, Patricia Moore was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The HOA collapsed under lawsuits and bankruptcy. And Riverside Hills no longer even has a homeowners association. But the strangest part came later. Because when the court settled the fraudulent sale, Richard legally ended up owning the land next to mine. He showed up at my apartment one afternoon with a grin and a folder. "I'm giving it to you," he said. Just like that. which means today I own 4 acres instead of 2. My cabin now sits right in the middle of it. Every morning I drink coffee on the porch and watch sunlight filter through the trees. And sometimes I think about the lesson hidden inside everything that happened. Power isn't always loud. The loud people threaten, bully, and think authority makes them untouchable. But real strength is quieter than that. It's patience. It's paying attention. It's knowing when to wait and when to act. Because silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is strategy. And sometimes justice doesn't come from shouting the loudest. Sometimes it comes from simply letting the truth catch up with the people who thought they could outrun it. But I still wonder something. If someone tries to steal your dream and you outsmart them instead of stopping them early, is that justice or revenge? What would you have done in my place? Would you have confronted them immediately or waited until the moment they couldn't escape the consequences? I'd really like to hear your thoughts. And if you've ever had to deal with an HOA that thought it had more power than it actually did,